My paranormal experiences have shaken me to my core, even unto this day. I was approximately 16 at the time of my first major paranormal encounter. And I do want to make this clear for everyone listening. The things I am about to talk about should not be mentioned by name very often. For the more you mention their name, the more power they gain, and the more likely you are to call these things to you. Every time I mention one of these encounters that I am about to recite to you, I will mention the name of the being or the entity once at the very beginning. But after that, they will only be referred to as it or they. I will be very clear and concise on what I am talking about. I will give you the descriptions of what was seen and what was heard. But please do remember that these things are real. They're not just folklore. They're not just something made up to scare people. And the biggest takeaway I need everyone to understand is what you bring into yourself, you will also show out. Garbage in, garbage out. What you fill your mind is what will determine what happens. The first encounter that I had was with a being called the Rake. I was approximately 15 or 16, one of the two. It was long ago. I was being a normal person on my phone, on YouTube, looking into cryptids, diving deep into Sasquatch and Dogman. And then upon my journeys into YouTube land, I came across this being. I came across what it does. And what this entity does is it torments its victims for up to 2 weeks before ripping their soul into another dimension and destroying it. Now, mind you, this was merely supposed to be a creepypasta. This thing was not meant to be real. But unfortunately, there's enough people that have believed this thing into existence, which, yes, you can believe things into existence. So be careful with what you enter into your mind, what you let in. So I began to listen to more and more stories of people encountering the white being. And eventually, I continued to get a more negative and negative impression following me around. Until the first time that I saw it. I was standing outside my front door, and I was talking with my father. And this white head popped out above my father, about 5 feet behind him, and was staring at me. Now, mind you, this head was approximately 8 feet off the ground. There were no eyes, just black sockets, and you could see a mouth that, when opened, would be massive. And as soon as I made eye contact with it, it ducked back behind the shed. I didn't think much of it, and I went back in the house, continuing to look on YouTube and do what I normally would do, researching Sasquatch and Dogman, as well as this other being. What ended up happening a week later shook me to the core, made me question my faith, and showed me just how hard you have to pray to save yourself from entities like this. When I say that I was in a literal fight for my life, I was. That night started out like any other night. I never liked going to bed after everybody else. When the house was silent, I always had to go to bed before everyone else did. One night I was awoken basically at approximately midnight. I had a very negative feeling in my room. There was some entity there that I didn't know what it was, and it woke me up. And what I saw at the edge of my bed down by my feet was the same head that I had seen behind the shed behind my father a week prior. And it smiled at me. The amount of evil that I felt radiating from this thing was worse than I've ever felt before. And I grew up in haunted houses. You know, there's a house down the road from me that had a Ouija board incident, and there's a portal to hell opened up in it. I mean, that's been verified. But this was darker than that. I never felt like I was going to die like I did when I saw that. And it wouldn't leave. That negative feeling wouldn't leave. I remember flying out of my bed, turning on the light. And usually when you're in the middle of the night and you turn on the light in your house or the light in your room, you'll feel like all the negative energy has gone to the shadows. Well, it didn't. I constantly felt that negative oppression, even in a room full of light. Now, my parents were in the next room oversleeping. They were literally just on the other side of the door. I could have ran in there and told my mom what had happened. I could have called for my mom. But I didn't. The only thing I could think of doing was grabbing my Bible off of my desk and opening it up to the Lord's Prayer. I remember reciting it over and over and over again for 5 hours. My mom eventually woke up at 5 a.m. and asked if I was okay because she saw my light on. And of course I had to tell her yes, I was okay, because I didn't want her to worry. You see, I'm sensitive to spirits. I have family members who are psychic. I am considered an intuitive medium or an intuitive sensitive. I pick up on things that a lot of people can't. I pick up on certain energies. I have a discerning of spirit. Basically, if you want to look at it from a biblical standpoint, it's the discernment of spirits. I remember never feeling safe in my room after that. I had to light sage every night when I went to bed, and I had to do that for years. Today, before speaking about any of these encounters, I had to light sage again. This thing did not go away because I told it to go away or because I prayed it to go away. It stayed around well into the time that I met my husband. He told me after we got together and we started staying together in my parents' house that he woke up in the night and he saw it mere feet away from me. And he attacked it spiritually. After that, it has disappeared and does not come back. But unfortunately, it has opened up for other entities. The second entity that I'm about to talk to you about, this name will also only be spoken once. The name of this entity is the Wendigo. These beings are reported to be anywhere between 8 and 10 feet tall, some ranging taller. They often are reported to have the horns of a deer, the antlers of a deer on its head, the skull of a deer, white flesh with skin and hide missing. These things are categorized by their insatious hunger. And these entities will possess people, turning them to cannibalism. These entities are the most active between the months of October and April, over the winter months, which, by how they are and by their nature of the unquenching hunger, winter is the hardest time where most animals struggle. So it makes sense that they would be of the winter. We've had issues with these on this property that we live at now. They've also been recorded to mimic people, calling someone by name, screaming for help. both of which we have heard. My husband has heard me calling for him, calling for help, when I have been in my parents' house, nowhere near him. I have been outside, tending to the dogs, and I've heard something call my name that sounded much like him from outside, asking me to come here. I need your help. Come here. Babe, come here. But it never comes from the direction of our houses. It's always at the thicket behind us. He has heard the same. This past early fall, he saw it. 8 foot tall behind a tree. Antlers in the deer skull as I described. We pray and we smudge this property, and we set a line of blessings on this property that these things cannot cross. Now these beings are still around, and yes, at just the sheer mention of the name, they show up. Just tonight, after mentioning it in passing, when I went to retrieve the dogs, you could hear something moving in the brush, and the dark oppression returned. The sheer mention of these things will bring them around, so do not use their name lightly. The third entity that I am about to speak to you of is that of the Skinwalker. Now, these things are witches of Navajo folklore, but are very real. These things are night stalkers. They change and transform into whatever they wish. They also can mimic the names and sounds of your loved ones. They can mimic the look of your loved ones. They can take flight of any animal, and they cannot be killed while they're in a foreign form. These things radiate evil. Their goal is to walk inside your mind until eventually they break you down so much spiritually that they can attack and destroy you. That is where they gain their power. We have had instances where strange animals have come onto the property and harassed our animals. We've had them call our names much like the other entity, but outside of the season of the other entity. We have had coyotes sounding off one moment and had crows flying over the next. Could this be natural? It could. But the likelihood of it being natural seems a little too sketchy for me. We've heard random growlings, and we've had animals come up to the house, and up by the animals, our other animals, our livestock. That didn't seem right. We've had coyotes come way too close, snapping and snarling at us when everybody knows a coyote will usually run off. Even around here, as ballsy as our coyotes tend to be, these ones didn't hesitate. They came right up to the property line, right up to our fence, not even 20 feet outside our door, snapping, snarling, and growling. Never once backing down, even when having a shotgun pointed at them. These things roam the property. They roam the area, as do all the evil things. We have had spirits walk through. We've had cloaked figures. We've also experienced dark mists floating across the property as well. But none of these entities that I've told you about, other than the very first, has really scared me. Because all the others, they're real. But the first entity shouldn't be real. It was never meant to be real. The more faith you put into something, the more likelihood it is to be real. If you had yourself and 5 others believe that there was a black and purple cat running the countryside that could shoot lightning from its claws, and enough people started believing in it, people would start seeing it. If people believed in a flying monkey, and more people believed that a monkey was flying around, it would come to fruition. So my only warning to people is be careful what you put stock in. Be careful what you put your faith or even your beliefs in. Because the more beliefs you put into something, the more real it will become. What you let into your life can sometimes be so much harder to get out. These things still haunt this property, and these things still haunt me. I may never get rid of these entities. Not without some serious help. The best way to keep them out is to never let them in the first place. So that is my word of warning. And be safe, everyone.
If you've had a paranormal experience and would like to be a guest on the show, please contact us by going to myparax.com. That's myparaex.com. Thanks for listening.